Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. Late for rest. This story centers around death. I'm late, she thought, as she ran for the bus. Her friends would say that was her life's motto. Amelia scrambled on the bus, trying not to jostle anyone. She had been given a final warning about not getting to work on time, and knew her boss was serious. She was good at her job. But this city had over 2 million people. She could be replaced. In fact, she was one of many autopsy technicians who were employed at her job. She enjoyed working with her colleagues and liked working under her supervisor. The problem was, on top of being a natural procrastinator, she was in school full-time while working full-time. But this was her last semester. Her goal was to become an ME. She had always been interested in true crime as a kid and spent her free time watching the ID channel. Her first interest was in forensic science because she wanted to investigate crime scenes. But death and dead bodies never bothered her, and she started working in the morgue as an undergrad, which spurred her interest in forensic pathology. It was then that she learned she was gifted in reading corpses. All those years of hearing about petechiae, cyanosis, and lividity became useful. She could read bodies like a book. That, combined with her proclivity for stockpiling information about diseases and murder, made her a veritable glossary of forensic pathology. Amelia was well liked at work because she was knowledgeable and friendly. Plus, she had a great work ethic while at work. It was outside of work that she struggled with procrastination. She just struggled to stay focused. If she had an assignment to do that required research, she'd end up going down rabbit holes on a side topic that caught her eye. She would know it's time to stop. But if a deadline wasn't impending, she knew she could get away with pushing something off in favor of exploring her current interest. This habit is what created such a wealth of knowledge for her. Unfortunately, it also made her have to do everything last minute or even late. Since becoming an adult and responsible for her own finances, she has never filed her taxes on time. 2 years in a row, she forgot altogether. To compensate, Amelia didn't get much sleep and often slept through her alarms. It was probably her body and brain's way to ensure she got enough sleep. Her boss didn't care how good of a worker she was if she continuously showed up late. She understood that, yet she still struggled to alter her habits. On top of that, she couldn't stay late because of her grad research. She had a thesis to finish and defend. Amelia lived in a state of guilt and shame over not being better at time management, but figured she'd have time to learn how to get better at it later. Today, it was important to not be late. There was still a possibility of making it on time. She missed her first bus, but ran full speed 6 blocks to catch a different one. She had a chance to rest before her stop, and then she'd have to sprint again for the light rail. It was a tight plan, requiring more physical exertion than she was used to, especially outside in Houston in the summer. But it was better to turn up drenched in sweat than late. For once, Amelia made it to work on time. And surprisingly, she wasn't sweating or even tired. Smiling to herself, she walked into the lab, expecting a few comments razzing her for unusual timeliness. However, everyone looked stern. This wasn't unusual in a morgue where many unfortunate events cause bodies to end up here. It was especially hard when it was a child or a victim of a violent assault. Or worse, a child who was a victim of a violent assault. Occasionally, a friend or relative of one of her colleagues came through. Everyone was very professional, but an underlying awkwardness was always present. Amelia approached the body they were centered around. She looked down at herself. Shock doesn't begin to describe what she felt. Confusion, of course, was also a dominant reaction. Was this a prank? The level of cruelty involved in doing something like this as a prank was beyond her comprehension. "What the fuck?" she yelled. For once, she was not late. And this is how they treat her. No one turned to look at her or even responded. "How the fuck did you do this?" Doubt started to flood in. She grew up in the foster system. Did she have a sister she didn't know about? Did she have a twin? "Who is this?" she yelled as her frustration and fear grew. Still, no one met her eye or replied. "When did she arrive?" her colleague Nate asked. "Half an hour ago," Mike, her supervisor, replied. For once, she was early. What the actual fuck, guys? "You are going too far," she screamed. She liked these people. How could they be so cruel? Was this supposed to be some kind of lesson for her extreme tardiness? Like an extreme example of what could happen if she continued living her life always running late. Ironically, I believe she was hit by a bus while she was running for a different one, Mike suggested. "Wow, death by bus," Angela quipped. "This is sick. It's not funny. Who is this?" she cried. Mike stepped back right into her, literally into her. It was slowly dawning on Amelia that this wasn't a prank. She looked down at the corpse that was obviously hers. She was dead. She was hit by a bus. It was unfathomable, but she still had a lot to do. "I don't think there is a need for an autopsy," Mike announced. Slowly, everyone turned away, and Amelia took the chance to step closer to her body. "Wait!" she exclaimed. No one listened. Amelia remembered her last moments. She had gotten in an argument with a man near the bus stop. His attempt at catcalling was graphic and disturbing, and she told him, "Shut the fuck up, creep." He retorted with a comment suggesting she needed to be raped. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Amelia demanded. "You're an uptight bitch who needs a good dicking down, whether you want one or not," he replied. "I don't have time for this," she mumbled to herself while looking around for help. She saw a cop car across the street and started to head that way. She had to pause because a bus was rapidly approaching her stop. The last thing she remembers is being pushed. "This was not an accident," she yelled at her colleagues. Desperation set in as she realized this would be recorded as an accident instead of the murder it was. Legally, it was probably manslaughter, but when you're the one killed, you feel murdered, not manslaughtered. Her colleagues continued to go about their business as Mike filled out the paperwork. "Please look again, Mike," she said as she peered over his shoulder. She watched him type the details, or her death, which she found the most surreal event of the day. "Please," she whispered again, before going to look at her body for evidence that she had been pushed. She needed someone to turn herself over. She even reached out herself, but in her non-corporeal state, there was nothing she could do. She cried tearlessly as she lost hope. "I feel we should do something more for Amelia," Angela said. "Like plan her funeral," Mike suggested. She had no family. "I was thinking more along the lines of an autopsy," she offered. "Amelia would have wanted one." It's true. Even if she hadn't suspected an attack, she still would want an autopsy. She had already planned for her body to be donated to the body farm when she died. She had lived a life of science and wanted to continue in death. "You're right," Mike said. Before getting up, he changed the paperwork to justify an autopsy. Amelia waited as patiently as she could until it happened. Her body was finally rolled over, and there were marks indicating that she wasn't just pushed, but punched in the back with 2 fists. "Holy shit," Angela remarked. Stunned, the whole team began discussing possibilities as Amelia felt herself being pulled away. "No, I don't want to go," she cried. This would be the final rabbit hole she'd ever go down, and the most important one to her. She fought against this invisible force, tugging her away, because her interest was piqued. She had to know that they solved this crime. The cops needed to know, to look at security cameras so they could find this guy. She physically felt like she was in a game of tug of war, with her soul being the middle of the rope. Finally, one last tug pulled her away. There's at least one place she could not be late for: a deer, a sign, and a tree prologue. The buck emerged from the line of pine trees, sniffed the warm fall air for any danger. He then strode across the mist-covered, grassy field, eyeing the weeds growing along the fence line. As he chomped on the weeds and grasses that grew along the wire fence next to the road, it failed to notice the timber rattlesnake that had been resting in the weeds as well. When the buck's hoof stepped on the rattler, the snake struck out and bit the leg. Once and again, the buck reared back and kicked at the snake. The buck then began to walk away, but only made it a few steps before the poison took effect. Its legs became stiffer, then stopped moving altogether. As the buck heart stopped, the buck tripped into the fence, knocking over one of the fence posts and a good portion of the fence as well. Attached to the fence post had been a no trespassing sign. The road Beatty Ave, next to the field, was rarely used, so the buck simply decomposed into the ground. Life carries on. 2 years would pass, and the buck had all but disappeared when David drove his delivery van down Beatty Ave. His mind was not on work, but on the loss of his wife and mother of their 3 boys, just a few months prior. Now working 2 jobs to keep the boys in the same house until the insurance company paid him what he was due. David looked at the row of Christmas trees in the field across the road. Like a tsunami, dread flooded his brain. This would be the first Christmas without Kathy. David had been dreading this time. Everyone told him the boys were young and would be fine. He would have to make a list of things to buy the boys over the next couple of months, decorate the house. Would he have to make cookies, as Kathy did with the boys? Or maybe he could ask his mother or mother-in-law to help. They were both always offering help in any way. His mind filled with thoughts of Christmas. He missed the turn off Beatty Ave to where the packages he needed to deliver. Cursing himself, he had to drive an additional 2 miles to find a driveway to turn around in and get back en route. Stay awake and pay attention, old boy. The last thing you need is to get into an accident, he said aloud to himself. David made his delivery and took his time walking back to his truck, taking deep breaths of the cool country air to clear his head. Putting his seatbelt on, he made the decision to call the grandmothers, and hard as it may be, ask for their help. He felt good after coming to this decision. With their help, it would be a good Christmas for the boys and himself. Driving back down Beatty Ave, he let his eyes wander over the row of pine trees again. This time, no tsunami of dread. but one of happiness. He slowed his truck to a stop when he saw a cardinal bouncing from limb to limb on one tree. David's mind seemed to relax for the first time since Kathy's death. After completing his deliveries, David returned home and immediately called his mother, and then Kathy's mother. Both were thrilled to help. Over the next 2 months, the mothers talked to each other and made a schedule of when cookies would be baked and the tree put up. The boys were very excited to be spending time with the grandparents. Both grandfathers, after finding out what was going on, joined in. It was building up to be a good Christmas. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, David loaded the boys in a truck he had borrowed from his brother and headed out. After 20 minutes of dancing around questions from the boy about where they were going, why did they need Uncle Jack's truck? David pulled over to the side of road next to the field of Christmas trees. "What are we doing here?" asked the oldest, Tommy. "Well, I think we need a tree, don't we?" David asked with a big smile on his face. All 3 boys looked out the window at the field of trees and began to cheer. Chad, the youngest, began making chopping motions with his hands. "Can I cut first?" he asked with a huge smile pinned to his face. "Here's the plan." David told his boys, "I was thinking we dig up the tree and bring it back home. Then, after Christmas, we can plant it in the backyard. What do you think?" "Mommy always loved Christmas trees," Chad said, still holding the smile on his face. But tears were gathering in his eyes. David could feel the mood in the truck change with Chad's statement. He inadvertently popped the happy balloon. He had to say something to bring joy and happiness back. "Yes," she did. "That is why I thought we could bring one home and keep it all year in the backyard," he said quickly, hoping this would help. Bill, the middle child, broke the silence when he pointed to the largest tree and announced they should bring that one home. The other 2 boys cheered in agreement. "I love your idea." All David could get out before the boys were out of the truck and running across the field towards the large tree. David chuckled to himself and went to the back to pull out the shovels and wheelbarrow. Then followed the boys through the field. The boys were basically dancing around the tree they had chosen, even though it was at least 12 feet tall and wider than Uncle Jack's pickup. "Boys, boys." David had to call several times to get their attention. "That tree is way too tall to even fit into the truck, let alone in the house. We can just trim some off the bottom to make it fit," Tommy said, looking up and down the tree. "Even if we could make it fit, there is no way the 4 of us can carry it to the truck." "Buddy, I was thinking of this one." David pointed to the tree he had seen the cardinal in a few months ago. "It's kind of small," Chad announced, looking from the large tree to the smaller one his dad was standing next to. "Yeah, Dad, Chad is nearly as tall as that one," Tommy added. "We can put it on a table in the living room," Dived improvised. "Plus, digging this one out is going to hard enough." Tommy shook his head. then clapped his brothers on the shoulders. David geared himself up for a fight with Tommy. Since Kathy's death, Tommy seems to have decided he was suddenly a man and didn't need to be told anything by his father. "Come on, guys. Dad's right, that one will be easier to dig up and carry to the truck," Tommy said, shocking his father. The boys and their day spent the next hour digging and pulling on the tree to free it from its grasp on terra firma. Moving to the new tree to and into the truck took an additional 15 minutes. On their way home, they stopped by a gardening center to get new soil and a large yellow planter. Yellow was their mom's favorite color. While shopping, Chad explained to the salesperson the pot was to put their mother in for Christmas, and then put her in the backyard. David had to quickly explain exactly what they were doing. The salesperson smiled and laughed and stated she understood. When they arrived home, David and the boys moved the tree to the edge of the truck edge. They removed burlap they had wrapped around the roots. David instructed them to pull off the earth from the roots before they put it into the new pot. He then went inside to clean up and start making dinner. David had just started browning the meat when Tommy ran inside. "Dad! Dad, Dad!" he called, running into the kitchen. David pulled the pan off the burner and looked at his son. "Look what we found on the tree." Tommy had 3 small whitish objects in his hand. "What are those?" David asked, whipping his hand on his shirt, then picking up one of the objects. "Looks like a stone, but didn't feel as heavy as it should have. I think they're finger bones," Tommy said, with a serious, straight face. "You see, the bigger one goes right here on your fingers." Tommy placed the longer of the bones on his finger between the first and second knuckle. "Well, Dr. Leet, you may be right," David said, with a little more concern in his voice than he meant to. "How many did you find?" "Just these 3, Tommy replied. "Tommy, we found some more funny stones," screamed Bill from the garage. David grabbed the remaining bones from Tommy's hand and put them on the kitchen counter, then pushed Tommy towards the garage. Once back in the garage, standing at the back of the truck, Chad was holding a hand full of bones that looked just like the ones Tommy had brought him. "Okay, boys," David said, looking outside the garage to see if anyone had heard Bill screaming his announcement. Not seeing anyone, he ushered the boys inside. "Let's get washed up for dinner now." "But Dad, we're not done yet," Chad mentioned as he pulled another clod of dirt off the root ball. David paused. "It will be easier once the dirt is all dried out." During dinner, David was quiet as the boys chatted endlessly while eating tacos. Halfway through dinner, David excused himself and took his cell phone into the living room. When he came back into the kitchen, he addressed the boys. "Guys," David started, then took a deep breath before continuing. "Don't be." David's mind went blank. He wasn't sure how to continue. "What the matter, Dad?" Tommy asked through a mouthful of tacos. "No easy way to say this," David bravely started, then immediately faltered, looking in the faces of his sons. "Okay, here it is. The special rocks you found today, cleaning out the roots of the tree. I think they are bones from fingers." Tommy, who had made the discovery, was not surprised. Bill looked at his fingers, as if the bones might be his own. Chad took advantage of everyone else being occupied and grabbed the last taco. 20 minutes later, a police cruiser, followed by an unmarked police car, pulled into the driveway. Over the next hour, the 2 police officers examined the root ball, while a crime scene detective collected the found bones and searched the roots for more. The detective had taken David into the living room to speak to him. Tommy, Bill, and Chad stood in the driveway and watched the police working. David came out a short time later and, without speaking to the boys, walked over to the neighbor's house and returned with the neighbor, Mrs. Atwell. "Boys, I need to go with the detective, and I'll be back. Until Mrs. Atwell is going to watch over you. I want you on your best behavior until I get back." Bill was the only one who responded. "Okay, you be good too," which brought a smile to David's face. The police finished collecting the bones and searching for the tree ball. They took the 2 shovels used by the family to dig up the tree, and then they left. It was after dark before David returned and collected his children and took them home. Over a pizza dinner, he told them he had taken the detective to the field where they dug up the tree. He explained that they had sort of illegally took the tree, but the detective said not to worry about it, and we could keep the tree. The 2 younger boys cheered. 3 days later, the detective called David back and explained they had found a complete skeleton in the hole they had removed the tree from. A forensic anthropology team responded and determined the body had been buried between 50 and 60 years ago. David expressed his thanks to the detective and said he would think about how to break it to his sons. David heard the detective take a deep breath, then explained he will have to do it sooner than later. While on site, the detectives found 7 more bodies buried under tress in the field. The field used to belong to a notorious mafia associate. The detective believed the bodies in the field were victims of mob hits. The news has already caught wind of the story, so they may be showing up for interview with the man who broke so many open homicide cases. Now it was David's turn to take a deep breath. He thought of Kathy and smiled to himself. She always had a way of making him forget bad things. "Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas." Jessica squints her eyes and bites down on her pinkish lower lip. "Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas." Jessica smiles, wrinkles forming around the corners of her mouth. She shakes her head down and chuckles. "Darling, what's the matter? What is going on in that big head of yours?" She gets up from her leather office chair and walks to her husband to squeeze his large, cold hands. Jessica's husband has never been so melancholy on December 24th. "I'm worried," he shares. About what? Tonight. Jessica was alarmed by her husband's words. In the 4 centuries, her husband has been delivering presents and joy to children all around the world. She has never heard him say those words. What is there to worry about? The elves are organized. Everyone has been getting along. The reindeer are so excited for tonight and full of energy. Rudolph's nose is shining brighter than ever. I think we could shut off the headlights on the sleigh to save energy. Jessica, it's not that. Is it him? What? The Grinch? I do not know what he's up to right now. Jessica searches for the answer in her husband's eyes, but all she sees is her reflection. She drops his hands. Now you are starting to worry me. You need to tell me what is going on, Jessica says sternly. I simply do not know. I just feel unusual. Is it me? Jessica asks. Nicholas doesn't answer. Mr. Claus? Mr. Claus? Jeannie the elf asks aggressively. Nicholas perks up from his dazed state and looks around. All the elves have stopped their work activities to observe the overweight man, normally jolly, sulk in his sleigh. The elves exchange hushed whispers, coated in concern. Not only is this moment instilling fear in them, but the Christmas operation is running behind. Why have you stopped? We need to get going. We need to be in New Zealand in 9 minutes, Nicholas yells. The elves shake at the thunderous volume of his voice and immediately finish packing the last few presents into his enormous red bag and feeding the reindeer their carrots. Nicholas has been delivering presents, or coal for the naughty children, for a few hours now. By the time Nicholas and the reindeer got to Amsterdam, Rudolph's nose was getting dimmer, and he was feeling slight fatigue. But they had to keep going. Nicholas was not singing holiday tunes as they flew in the crisp, frigid air in Croatia. He even dropped the wrong present, a gaming console, in the wrong house in Nigeria, and had to fly back to little Kemi's house to switch it with the correct one, a skateboard. The reindeer could sense the disorganization and gloominess from Nicholas. Nicholas knew that tonight was more delicate than usual because he was making mistakes for the first time in centuries. His stomach was full of nerves and milk and cookies. 11:55 p.m. CST, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Nicholas rolls forward and lands on his feet in an upright position, like an Olympic gymnast. His chunky black boots leave faint imprints on the beige carpet. The Christmas lights are still on inside the Alotzi family home, providing light to guide him towards the Christmas tree. He places 3 gifts: a bicycle for Kechi, 8, a basketball hoop for Leon, 10, and a limited edition comic book for Josiah, 12. Nicholas smiles. A sense of peace washes over him, a feeling he has not felt all day. Josiah is the oldest, and he recently started to lose vision in his right eye. It has changed how he plays with his friends and how he learns his favorite subjects in school. But he was an exceptionally good boy this year. He deserves that comic book. That's what it's all about for Nicholas. Bringing joy to children. Nicholas looks around the cozy living room, looking for cookies and milk. With nothing in sight to quench his thirst or hunger, he walks towards the kitchen. This family is well off, he thinks to himself. Big white cabinets, stainless steel appliances, large square footage, pristine, clean, quiet. Milk and cookies wait for him on the large rectangular wooden dining table. Nicholas sips on the milk. He can see the family's new silver barbecue grill sitting outside the back door through the sliding door windows. The right side of the sliding door looked damaged. The white siding is bent and cracked, so much for pristine. As he put the tall glass of milk down, his head became hot. Sweat started to form from underneath his red hat. Something is not right, he thought. The milk was hot, steaming as if someone had just warmed it up just before he got there. Police! Put your hands where we can see them. Before Nicholas could turn around, he was tackled to the ground by an unknown man. Get off of me! He screams in agony. Nicholas, unable to lift his head to see ahead of him, hears more footsteps. An army of footsteps come from several positions in the kitchen. Doors swing open. Wooden chairs are toppled over. Bright flashlights illuminate his face. Nicholas feels his breath weaken and starts heaving. All right, officer. No need to suffocate him, a voice says. Nicholas feels a weight lift off his back and is finally able to lift his head. Officers dressed in thick, dark-colored bulletproof vests, masks, weapons, and boots surround the kitchen. St. Nicholas, you are under arrest for trespassing, breaking and entering, animal abuse, and violating the labor code. 2 officers appear beside him to bring him to his feet and start to cuff his hands behind his back. These are preposterous claims, Nicholas exclaims. Sir, anything you say may be used against you in court. You have the right to remain silent. I am not a criminal. I am Santa Claus. Nicholas wiggles frantically in his cuffs. If you arrest me, millions of children will not get their Christmas presents. I need to finish my job. Can I speak to your superior? Who is responsible for placing these charges against me? A sinister silence comes. The officers turn their faces away from the now red-faced Nicholas towards a corner of the kitchen. The pantry, it opens with a creak, and a quiet, cold breeze sweeps through the kitchen. A trapped cry can be heard in the large pantry. Nicholas's eyes cannot believe what he is seeing. A mother, stepfather, and 3 kids, the Alozi family, are bound together, not with the joyful spirit of Christmas, but by dry, brown rope. Their mouths taped shut. Not a word from their lips, but their eyes do the talking. desperation and fear reeks from the sweat that covers their heads. Nicholas screams and tries to free himself from the restraint of the handcuffs, but the officers hold him back. "I wouldn't try that if I were you," a familiar voice sounds. But Nicholas cannot quite put a finger on it. The unknown figure's boots make loud thuds on the floor as they walk closer to Nicholas. The other officers part themselves like the Red Sea and make way for them. A cap shades her face in the low-lit kitchen, but Nicholas can make out her shiny, blonde hair. "Cindy!" She slowly lifts her head. "Hello, Santa Claus?" "Cindy Lou, what is the meaning of all of this?" Nicholas asks. Little Cindy Lou, who, from Whoville, sports a black jumpsuit and an unauthorized police badge. Her eyes are black with deceit and evil. A distant image from the small girl who loved Christmas. "Cindy, please, remember the day the Grinch stole Christmas? How painful that was for you and your town. Imagine the millions of children experiencing the same thing this Christmas right now. Is that what you want?" Nicholas pleads. Cindy leans closer to Nicholas. "It's not about what I want, Claus. Are these officers even legitimate? Cindy Lou, answer me. And why tie this poor family up on Christmas Eve?" The eyes of the smallest Alozi child, Keiichi, beg for freedom. "Actually," Cindy Lou checks her watch, "it's Christmas Day, and it's about what he gets." Nicholas smells a grisly scent, and immediately his eyes open wide. A masked figure appears from a clump of officers. He gently removes his mask and reveals his skin, all green, and teeth, all yellow with termites. "I should have known better," Nicholas whispers to himself. "Merry Christmas, Santa Claus." Nicholas is enraged. Veins start to pop from his neck. Why so sad, Santy? What happened to the holly jolly fat man with a white beard that everyone knows and loves? Let me go, now. No, 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 no can do, Santy. Nicholas uses his large body to push the officers, if they even are real Canadian authorities, off him. They fall to the ground, but Nicholas is still surrounded by several angry officers, ready to take him down. Cindy waves her gloved finger, instructing the officers to pounce on Father Christmas. A struggle ensues, and Nicholas is forced to the ground again. He fights with all his will, yelling and kicking with the most power an almost 2,000-year-old man could. "Stop resisting," one officer demands. "You need to comply, sir," another one says. "Punch his fat belly if you need to. Or even better, kick his head," Cindy commands. Nicholas weakly lifts his head, and his fearful eyes drift towards the vile, green-skinned monster beside Cindy. He shows all his 55 crooked, revolting teeth. A bad banana. "Suspect has his hand on a weapon," the monster shouts. Nicholas furrows his bushy eyebrows in confusion. He thinks to himself, "I do not have my hand on a..." A green Glock 17 appears between Nicholas's eyes, and it fierce with a deafening rumble. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas, the Grinch hollers, like a breath of cold air. By December, Montreal was buried under a heavy coat of snow that had been piling up since late October. Gray slush lined the streets, the result of salt and traffic grinding the once pristine snow into a dirty, icy mess. The biting cold cut through even the thickest coats, and the endless scraping of shovels and snowplows provided a constant backdrop to city life. Holiday decorations were everywhere, but their cheer felt commercial, more of a reminder to spend money than a celebration. The air smelled faintly of exhaust and wet wool, the kind of scent that lingered in crowded metro stations and poorly insulated homes. Yet, as Veronique walked through the city streets, her boots crunching against the fresh snow, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She'd always loved the holidays. As a child, she'd marveled at the shimmering decorations, the sound of boots crunching against ice, and the occasional scent of poutine wafting from nearby diners. But this year, the joy seemed oddly hollow, as if it were a beautiful facade masking something dark and unspoken. She paused at the corner by Sherbrooke, her breath curling in front of her in frosty puffs. It wasn't just the odd unease she'd felt all week. There were other signs, too. Small things that would have gone unnoticed if she weren't already on edge. Like the fact that the street lights on Peel Street flickered every time she passed, even though they stayed steady for everyone else. Or the elderly woman at the grocery store who stared at her just a little too long, her milky eyes narrowing in suspicion before she hurried away. Then there was the panhandler. Brian had been a fixture outside McGill University's McLennan Library for as long as Veronique could remember. Now in her third year, she'd often passed him on her way to classes. Wrapped in layers of tattered coats and scarves, he was well known among the students, who occasionally dropped coins into his cup. Brian had a reputation for getting himself thrown in jail during the harshest nights of winter, a desperate but effective way to stay warm. Last year, however, everything had changed. Brian had started muttering about the Winter Watcher, claiming to have seen him lurking in the city. His stories grew more frantic, and the locals dismissed him as crazy. Then, one night, Brian's body had been found in an alley, his lifeless form curled against the icy ground. Officially, it was chalked up to exposure, but his wild claims lingered in Veronique's mind. Lately, she'd been seeing Brian again, or at least she thought she had. Every time Veronique walked by the library, he'd be sitting there, looking directly at her, his eyes impossibly sharp and knowing. But no one else seemed to notice him. When she asked Tara, her friend had just laughed nervously. Brian's been gone for a year, Veronique. Maybe you're just remembering him. And when she glanced back, it was as if he'd vanished into thin air. Get a grip, Veronique muttered to herself, pulling her scarf tighter around her neck. She glanced around the bustling street. Everything looked perfectly ordinary. People bustled into malls or hurried underground into the metro system to escape the biting wind. And yet, she still felt the weight of something looming just beyond reach. She turned toward Upstairs Jazz Bar and Grill on Bishop Street, a cozy spot where she could grab a reasonably priced lunch and momentarily escape the cold. As she walked, she couldn't shake the nagging sensation that Brian's ghostly presence had followed her. Even now, she felt as if a pair of eyes were drilling into her back, though every glance over her shoulder revealed nothing but bustling pedestrians. The regular waiter, Roman, who hailed from Poland, greeted her with a familiar nod. People like Roman weren't called baristas in the 1990s, but he knew her usual order by heart. The usual, Veronique? Roman asked, already reaching for a menu, but knowing she probably wouldn't need it. Veronique nodded, offering a half smile. She found a seat near the small stage, cradling her coffee as jazz music played softly in the background, its warmth seeping into her hands. She stared out at the bustling street, searching for what? She didn't know, but the feeling of being watched pressed against her back, making her fidget in her chair. You okay? Roman's voice startled her. He had appeared beside her, his concern etched across his features. Yeah, I'm fine, Veronique said quickly. Just tired, I guess. Roman hesitated, then nodded. Well, let me know if you need anything. When he walked away, Veronique caught sight of something in the reflection of the window. The panhandler from outside the library, standing still as stone on the opposite side of the street. She whipped her head around, but the spot was empty. The crowd moved on, oblivious. Veronique's pulse quickened. She could have sworn she'd seen him. Not just anyone, either. It was unmistakably the same man. His ragged layers and piercing gaze haunted her thoughts. She shook her head, taking a long sip of her mocha. Maybe she was imagining things. That night, the whispers returned. Veronique lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding in the dark. The murmurs were faint, but unmistakable, as if coming from the walls themselves. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. The whispers stopped abruptly, leaving the room in suffocating silence. Veronique reached for her phone, its glow a small comfort in the oppressive dark. She typed a quick text to her best friend, Tara. "I think I'm losing it." Weird noises in the house again. A reply came almost instantly. "Want me to come over?" Veronique hesitated. She didn't want to drag Tara into this, whatever this was. "No, I'll be fine." Just needed to tell someone. She set the phone down and closed her eyes, willing sleep to come. When it finally did, her dreams were restless. A blur of faceless figures, snow turning crimson, and the sound of bells tolling deep and low. The next morning, Veronique decided she needed answers. If she didn't do something, the unease would consume her. She started with the McGill Library, its towering stone facade dusted with fresh snow. The interior smelled of aged paper and varnished wood. The librarian, Mrs. Haversham, greeted her with a kind smile. Researching something special? Veronique hesitated, unsure how to phrase her question without sounding unhinged. Actually, have you ever heard of anything strange happening around here? Like weird stories or legends? Mrs. Haversham's smile faltered. Strange how? I don't know. Just things that don't feel right. Or people seeing things that aren't there. The librarian's gaze sharpened. She glanced around to make sure they were alone before leaning in. You're not the first to ask questions like that. This city has its quirks, let's say, especially around this time of year. What do you mean? Veronique pressed, her pulse quickening. Mrs. Haversham hesitated. There's an old story about someone called the Watcher. It's just a folk tale, of course, but some say he appears in times of great personal unrest. They say he watches, waiting for something. But here's the strange part. Only the one he's watching can see him. Veronique swallowed hard. Have you seen him? The librarian's face darkened. No, and I hope I never do. That evening, Veronique found herself standing in her living room, staring at the Christmas tree she'd painstakingly decorated the week before. The ornaments gleamed under the soft glow of the fairy lights, but the sight brought her no comfort. Mrs. Haversham's words echoed in her mind. The Watcher. She'd looked up the story online when she got home. Most of the information was vague, but the consistent thread was that he appeared during moments of deep vulnerability, as if drawn to people who felt unseen themselves. The knock at the door made her jump. She turned, her heart racing. It was probably Tara, she told herself, though a chill crept over her as she remembered the last time she'd seen Brian. Was he outside again? Could ghosts knock? But when she opened the door, no one was there. Just the cold wind and the faint sound of carolers in the distance. She stepped outside, peering into the night. Snow fell softly, blanketing the world in an eerie stillness. Then she saw him, Brian, standing at the end of her driveway. There was no mistaking it. His tattered layers and unblinking stare were as vivid as they had been when he was alive. She wanted to call out, to demand answers, but her voice caught in her throat. The figure didn't move, only watching her with an intensity that froze her in place. Veronique's breath caught in her throat. She stumbled back inside, slamming the door and locking it. Her hands shook as she grabbed her phone to call Tara. But before she could dial, the whispers started again, louder this time, surrounding her. She clamped her hands over her ears, but it was no use. The lights flickered. Then, with a final, shuddering gasp, they went out. In the darkness, Veronique felt the weight of his presence. She didn't need to see him to know he was there, just beyond the door, watching, waiting, and for the first time, she understood what he wanted. Her. The next morning, Veronique's house stood as it always had, its cheerful decorations a stark contrast to the unease that lingered in the air. Neighbors passed by, unaware of what had transpired within those walls. But Veronique was gone, leaving behind only faint footprints in the snow leading toward the city streets. And in Montreal's busy streets, the holiday festivities carried on. But every so often, someone would pause, glancing over their shoulder, a fleeting sense of being watched brushing against their mind before disappearing like a breath of cold air. The call scene. A rainy evening. Thunder rumbles in the distance as rain taps steadily against the window of a modest apartment. The dim lighting casts long, restless shadows across the room. The faint flicker of a nearby street lamp seeps through the blinds, adding a melancholic glow to the space. A landline phone rings, sharp and intrusive, cutting through the ambient rain pattern. Sitting on her worn couch with a half-read book resting on her lap, Claire stiffens. She glances at the phone, her heart thumping at the unexpected sound, as if it doesn't fit into her tranquil evening. After a moment's hesitation, she picks it up. Claire, hello? The line crackles faintly, followed by a pause so long it feels static. Then, a calm and deliberate voice speaks. Stranger, is this 555-3248? Claire, yes, who is this? The voice carries a weight that makes her sit up straighter. Stranger, you don't know me, but I must talk to you. Claire frowns, her grip on the receiver tightening. Her free hand instinctively brushes the edge of her book, the texture grounding her in an unreal moment. Her eyes dart to the rain-speckled window, searching for a reason and context to anchor the odd exchange. Claire, I think you have the wrong number, stranger. No, Claire, I don't. Her name hits her like a sharp slap, causing her breath to catch. The stranger's calm, steady tone unnerves her. A chill creeps up her spine as she glances around the small apartment. The corners of the room seem darker now, with the shadows stretching like tendrils toward her. Claire, pause. How do you know my name, stranger? That's not important. What matters is that you listen to me. You're not safe. Her mind races. 1,000 explanations surge forward, each more implausible than the last. Her voice wavers, though she forces an edge of firmness into her tone. Claire, sharply. "Excuse me?" Her grip on the receiver tightens, and her knuckles whiten. An involuntary tremor beneath her surface betrays the facade of control she's trying to project. "Stranger, please, just listen. There's no time to explain everything. You need to leave your apartment now. Don't pack a bag. Don't waste a second. Just go." Claire blinks, her mind catching onto the sheer absurdity of the command. She lets out a nervous laugh, though it sounds hollow even to her ears. "Claire, okay, seriously, who put you up to this? Was it Nina? She's always pulling this kind of..." "Stranger, this isn't a joke, Claire." The voice pierces her deflection with a sharp edge. Thunder crashes outside, shaking the windows and masking the sound of her sharp inhale. Claire stands instinctively, the book falling from her lap. Her bare feet press against the cold hardwood floor, grounding her again in the surreal moment. "Claire," voice rising, "I don't know who you are, but..." Stranger, interrupting, "Look out your window." Her heartbeat quickens. She hesitates, clutching the receiver as though it's the only thing tethering her to reality. Slowly, she moves to the window, her hand shaking as she pulls back the blinds. The street below is drenched in the rain, but her eyes immediately land on a figure standing across the street, motionless under the flickering light of a street lamp. Their face is obscured by a hood, their silhouette unnervingly still. Claire's breath catches as the figure tilts its head, as though she is aware she is watching. "Stranger, now, do you believe me?" Claire stumbles back from the window, her heart pounding. The receiver trembles in her hand. Her voice is a hoarse whisper. "Claire, who is that, stranger?" "Someone who shouldn't be there. Leave. Now." Claire glances toward the door of her apartment, her mind spinning with questions. The shadows in the room seem to deepen, pressing in around her. She feels the weight of the stranger's words. The urgency is unmistakable. Her instincts scream at her to move, but fear roots her in place. The voice cuts through her attempt at humor, sudden and sharp, freezing her mid-sentence. "Stranger, I wouldn't call if it weren't serious." Claire, snapping, "I don't even know who you are. Why would I trust anything you're saying?" "Stranger, I've been watching and know about the black car parked across the street." Claire's emotions become numb. Earlier, she had barely noticed the car, attributing it to a neighbor's visitor or someone sheltering from the rain. Now, the memory of its presence sharpens, and her hands shake as she edges toward the window. Her voice drops to a whisper. "Claire, how do you..." "Stranger, It's been there for hours, hasn't it? Two men inside. They're waiting for something or someone. The stranger's words weigh her down, causing her to hesitate. Slowly, she reaches for the curtain, pulling it back just enough to see. Her heart hammers as her gaze locks onto the sleek black car parked beneath the flickering street lamp. The rain cascades off its hood, dark windows like mirrors, revealing nothing of what lies inside. Her breath catches in her throat, her voice trembling as she forces the question out. Claire, voice trembling. Who are they, stranger? Not friends. That's all you need to know. Her stomach twists. Her mind races, trying to make sense of the situation. She looks back at the car as though staring long enough will unlock some clue to their presence. The thought of being watched targets claws at her sanity. Claire, hoarse whisper. Why would they be watching me, stranger? You have something they want. Or maybe someone you know does. It doesn't matter. People perceive you as a solitary figure. Her vision blurs with rising panic. She steps back from the window, her hand gripping the curtain, as though it's the only thing keeping her upright. Her eyes dart around the apartment, scanning the familiar clutter. Her jacket slung over a chair, an unopened stack of mail on the kitchen counter, and the half-empty glass of wine on the table, as if the answer might be hiding there. But nothing makes sense. Claire, frantic. I don't understand. I'm just an office manager. I don't, stranger, interrupting, firm. Claire, focus. You're wasting time. Leave now. Take the fire escape. Don't use the front door. Her head spins. The idea of fleeing overwhelms her senses. Rain drums against the window, matching the frantic beat of her heart. She stumbles toward the couch, snatching up her phone and keys, her voice rising in a desperate plea. Claire, shaking her head. And go where, stranger? Anywhere but there. Head toward the train station. Don't stop until you're in a crowded place. She freezes, gripping the phone tightly, her knuckles white. Her voice drops to a whisper, tears threatening to spill. Claire, choking. I don't know if I can trust you. The line goes silent for a beat, but when the voice returns, it's colder, steelier, a warning, laced with urgency. Stranger, you don't have to trust me, but if you stay, they will come inside, and they won't knock. The words struck her deeply. A fresh wave of fear courses through her as a sound cuts through the rain. A distant car door shutting. Claire's breath hitches. She turns back to the window, pulling the curtain aside, just enough to see a shadowy figure step out of the black car. Another figure follows, their movements deliberate and synchronized. One figure adjusts their coat, and for a fleeting moment, she notices the gleam of something metallic at their side. Stranger, urgently. Claire, go now. Her breath tightens in her throat. The phone slips from her hand, clattering onto the table as adrenaline takes over. She bolts for the window, leading to the fire escape, fumbling with the latch. The rain hisses against the glass, and the faint hum of voices from the street grows louder. She freezes as a sharp knock echoes from the front door. It's noisy, firm, and final. The sound reverberates through the apartment like a countdown. Stranger. From the fallen receiver. Faint. Don't look back. Just run. The rain outside grows heavier, drumming against the window, as if urging her to act. Claire stands paralyzed, her feet rooted to the floor, and her mind caught between disbelief and the suffocating weight of fear. Claire, growing frantic, picking up the phone. Wait. I need more than this. I need answers. Who are you? How do you know all of this? There's a long pause on the other end. The silence is so profound that she can hear her shaky breaths. When the voice returns, it's softer, almost regretful. Stranger. Someone who owes you a debt. A big one. Claire, confused. A debt? I don't even know you. Stranger. You don't remember, but you saved my life once. And now, I'm saving yours. Her thoughts whirl, memories colliding in her mind like shattered glass. Fragments of the past flash before her. Small acts of kindness, fleeting interactions with strangers. But then, one moment stands out. Years ago, she pulled an injured man out of a wrecked car on a rainy night like this one. The metallic tang of blood, the desperate sound of his gasps, and her trembling hands pressed against his wound until paramedics arrived. His face, pale and bleeding, swims into focus in her mind. Claire, voice shaking. Is this about that car accident? Were you? Stranger, firmly. There's no time for questions. Go now, Claire. I'll call you again when it's safe. The phone clicks, the line going dead. The finality of the sound lingers in her ears. Claire stands frozen, the receiver still pressed to her ear, her knuckles white. She flinches as a crack of thunder rattles the windows. Slowly, she lowers the phone, her eyes drifting back to the window. The black car remains motionless, but now a faint glow of a cigarette flares inside. Her chest tightens as she stares at the tiny ember, an ominous beacon in the darkness. Claire, to herself, whispering, "What the hell is going on?" Suddenly, a faint creak from the hallway shatters the silence. Her heart leaps into her throat, her breath catching. She spins toward the sound, her eyes wide and searching. The noise could be anything. The old building settling, a neighbor, but now it feels like a warning. The hairs on her arms rise, and instinct takes over. She grabs her jacket, and keys from the couch. Her movements hurried and clumsy. Without a second thought, she moves to the window. The rain lashes at the glass, its icy touch shocking her as she forces the stubborn frame open. The fire escape looms outside, a slick, glistening path into the storm. Climbing through, the cold rain instantly soaks her, plastering her hair to her face. The metal beneath her feet is treacherous, every step a gamble. She grips the railing tightly, her knuckles aching as she descends. Below her, the black car suddenly roars to life. The headlights snap on, slicing through the downpour. She catches her breath. A door slams, and a tall, shadowy figure steps out. Their movements are purposeful and unhurried. Claire doesn't wait to see more. She runs, her feet slipping on the slick fire escape as she reaches the ground. The rain blurs her vision, each drop like a needle against her skin. Her breath is ragged, her pulse pounding in her ears. Behind her, the unmistakable sound of footsteps splashing in the water. Pools echoes through the narrow alley. The sound is steady and deliberate. A voice, not the stranger's, pierces the storm with a low, menacing call. Voice: Claire, stop. You can't run forever. The words twist in her mind, each syllable heavy with malice. She doesn't look back. Every instinct screams at her to keep moving. She darts into an alley, her feet slipping on the wet concrete. The flickering street lamps overhead cast eerie shadows that seemed to chase her. Although the train station isn't far away, every step feels like a lifetime. Her muscles burn, her lungs ache, but she pushes forward, the stranger's voice echoing in her mind. Stranger's voice in her mind. You're not safe. As the rain intensifies, so does her determination. Each crack of thunder feels like a countdown. Each shadow is a threat. She is confident that she cannot stop. Whatever this is, whatever danger is hunting her, standing still means death. And Claire isn't ready to die. And a day to remember. Francina Tutiliogi sat up in bed, holding on to dear life the photo of the man who melted her heart, Troy Edwards. It was the night before the big day, the biggest day in her life, where she was going to walk down that aisle and say, I do, officially becoming Mrs. Troy Edwards. It was the moment her family had been awaiting, including all her cousins, distant and close, from all over the town. As she glanced at the photo of the striking young man, his golden hair that was slicked back, and ocean blue eyes that possessed serenity in them, with whom she'd spend the rest of her life. She sighed dreamily as she began to reminisce about the first time they laid eyes on each other. 1 year ago, during the summer, Troy was a student at the University of Cambridge studying English. when he was offered a study abroad program that gave him the opportunity to travel to Italy. The summer program lasted for 7 weeks, and it was during one of those 7 weeks when he made a chance encounter with Francina. She was making her way back home from grocery shopping, and he was trying to find the best restaurant in town. She bumped into him, both hands carrying bags filled with vegetables and other ingredients for dinner, with a carrot falling to the ground. He picked it up for her, and when she looked up, she was enthralled by what she saw. With a sheepish grin, he spoke to her in flawless Italian, asking her for directions to the nearest restaurant for dinner. She laughed, replying to him in Italian that she could speak English as well, and she invited him to dine with her and her family so that he was not alone. Leave it to Francina to show generosity to a complete stranger, especially to an Englishman as good-looking as Troy was, with his sexy accent. She liked that he made an effort to communicate with her in Italian. Not many foreigners, yet alone Americans, would have gone out of their way to do that. Troy followed Francina to her home, where she introduced him to her family. He shook hands with Francina's father, Marco, and her mother, Martina. He also got to know her cousins, Elisa, Paolo, and Natalia, as well as her maternal grandparents, Rosa Maria and Giuseppe. Francina did not have any siblings, so her cousins were like the siblings she'd never had. Troy was an only child as well, so this was the first thing that bonded them as something they had in common. Despite Marco's protectiveness of his only daughter, interacting with a man who was not Italian, he still got along with Troy, as did the rest of the family. Troy was a pleasant guest, and he was able to tell the family about who he was. They were impressed by his academic background and his flawless Italian, which eased the initial tensions between them when they encouraged him to speak English to them. Francina was impressed by Troy's ability to charm her family, and for the first time in her life, she fell in love without even realizing it. He charmed his way into her heart, and she wanted to make sure he never forgot. So, when dinner was over and he was getting ready to leave, Francina walked Troy out and thanked him for his company. "I hope to see you again sometime soon," she said. "I'll see what I can do." He gave her that unforgettable smile before he left, and Francina sighed as she thought about the handsome man who came into her home that night and stole her heart away. As a 17-year-old girl, she'd never felt this way about anyone until she laid eyes on Troy. Now, it's been a whole year since that memorable night when she met him, and Francina was eager to marry Troy. She was 18, and he was 23, so she was not too young to get married. This was a time when it was the norm for women to wed at a young age, and Francina's family strongly believed that she was old enough to fall in love and marry. In their eyes, she was no longer a little girl. Marco realized this when Troy came over last week and asked for his permission to marry his beautiful, precious daughter. He trusted and loved Troy enough to consider him to be the son that he'd never had. And he eventually offered the young man his blessing to wed Francina. The next day, Martina and Rosa Maria accompanied Troy to the jewelry store to find the most beautiful ring for Francina, which took them an hour until he found the perfect one. When Troy realized how expensive it cost, he was unsure if it was worth it to spend abundant pocket money on a ring that Francina might not appreciate later in life. He was not employed at the moment, so this would pose a potential financial threat. Rosa Maria, giving him a sympathetic smile, suggested, "I suppose it would be better if you could just give her mine instead." She took off her ring and gave it to him. "Her grandfather gave this to me, which I also gave to her mother here. And now I'm giving it to you to give to her. This ring is a symbol of love in our family, and I have no doubt that you'll make her happy." Troy examined the ring before he could accept it. "Are you sure, Signora?" he asked. Rosa Maria nodded in response as a tear fell down her eye. Martina held her mother's hand. She could tell this was an emotional decision for her mother to make, for the sake of her lovely daughter. Martina said, "Real love does not cost anything. The gift you give must come straight from the heart. Francina shall treasure this all the days of her life. This we are certain of." Rosa Maria had brought her ring's jewelry box with her to secure the ring for the time being. The three of them thanked the store owner for her time before they departed, and Troy's decision was set. He was going to propose to Francina that evening during dinner. That evening, Francina was wearing a lovely aqua blue dress, looking as stunning as ever. She was elated to see Troy join her for dinner, for two at her house. And here he was, dressed in a suit and tie. She didn't know it, but he had the ring in his pocket for safekeeping. He would take it out during dessert time, but for now, it was time to enjoy the main course, while a musician that her mother hired played gentle, romantic music on the piano. When it was time for dessert, the maid came to collect their dinner plates so that the cook could serve the tiramisu and panna cotta. Francina's favorite dessert since childhood was panna cotta, so it was a miracle that the cook could read her mind by providing her favorite dessert. The main course wasn't all that bad either, but the dessert was the best part. Troy held Francina's hand and gazed lovingly into her chocolate-brown eyes. "Have I ever told you how beautiful you looked tonight?" he asked in a smooth voice that caused her heart to beat. "You tell me that all the time," she replied with a giggle. "Well, that is the truth. and I'll never let you forget it. I love you, Francina. I can't explain it, but you mean the world to me. I've never met a woman as beautiful as you. I never felt this way about anyone else before, if you can believe it. Francina smiled. She believed it. He was her first and only. I love you too, Troy. I love to spend time with you. And I love how happy you make my family. Their happiness is important to me, too. Thank you for opening my eyes and my heart to see what true love is. I do what I do best. He grinned as he made his bold move by getting down on one knee and taking out the ring. And this is the best thing I'll ever do. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Francina. I know your family must think that you're much too young. But for me, this feels right. I don't wish to wait a minute longer. Life is short and precious. Precious, just like you. A tear of joy ran down Francina's face. For a second, she thought she was dreaming, but she was not. This was reality. Troy Edwards was really proposing to her. Troy, she began. Shh, don't say anything yet. I love you with all my heart, Francina. Your family has been generous and kind to me, especially your father. He gave me his blessing to ask for your hand in marriage. He loves you and is rather protective of you, which is a great thing, because it means that you come from a loving family who want nothing but the best for you. They can agree that I'm the best for you, right? So, what do you say, Francina Tutiliogi? Will you make me the happiest man in the world and be my wife? Another tear ran down Francina's face as she glanced down at the ring. She recognized it as her grandmother's ring, and it was a family treasure. Rosa Maria had handed it down to Martina, and Martina decided to give it to Troy to give to Francina. Touched by the beauty of the ring, Francina had no choice but to say yes to forever. Yes, yes, 1,000,000 times yes, she squealed with joy as he put the ring on her finger. Troy announced. She said yes, everybody. Her family arrived in the kitchen to congratulate the young couple. They had organized this dinner so that Francina and Troy could share a private moment with each other as he proposed to her. She just made him the happiest man alive by saying yes. For the rest of the week, after that memorable evening, Francina and her family began preparing for the wedding. Troy's family and friends flew in from England so that they could be there for him. Now, the two families were eager to celebrate their children's eternal bliss. The night before the big day, Francina sat up in bed as she glanced at Troy's photo on her nightstand, reminiscing about the first time she met him, and her fears were eased. Everything was going to be perfect. She woke up in a blissful mood the next morning. A bright and beautiful Saturday. That morning, her family was cheerful as they worked with the photographers and makeup artists to capture as many photos of the bride-to-be as possible. Marco and Giuseppe decided to head to the church to inform the priest that they were getting Francina ready for the occasion. And they stayed in the church with the priest and incoming guests for the ceremony. The women remained in the house with Francina, along with her cousins, for moral support as she wore her elegant, long-sleeved, V-neck lace gown. It was an original, nothing like what her mother, grandmother, or aunts had worn before. Rosa Maria couldn't contain her emotions as she wept at the sight of her stunning granddaughter. She told Francina, "Sei una sposa bellissima. You make a beautiful bride." Francina, flattered by the compliment, gave her grandmother a hug. "Nonna, non piangere. Se piangi, mi farai piangere anche tu." Grandma, don't cry. If you cry, you'll make me cry too. Rosa Maria told Francina that she'd see her downstairs after her cousin, Elisa, helped her with her necklace. After Rosa Maria left, Elisa went to her room to find a more stylish necklace for Francina. In the moment that her cousin and grandmother left, and Francina was alone in her room, Francina went up to the window to open it so that she could get some fresh air in her room. It was supposed to be a very warm afternoon, but then she felt someone shove her in the back, causing her to stumble backward onto the window, shattering it. And she screamed as she fell many feet from the window to the ground. Elisa returned to her room, dumbstruck when she saw the shattered glass, and peered out at her injured cousin on the ground and cried out in terror. Francina, Rosa Maria, and the others came running to the room. "Cosa è successo?" Rosa Maria asked Elisa, seeking to know what happened. Elisa replied, sobbing, "È Francina. È caduta dalla finestra." It's Francina. She fell out the window. Everyone gasped in shock and horror as they came up to the room, glanced at the remains of the broken glass window on the floor. Martina called 911 to report that her daughter had fallen out of the window. She offered to stay behind with Francina until help arrived, while Rosa Maria and the other women volunteered to go to the church to break the shocking news to Marco, Giuseppe, and even Troy. The wedding would have to be postponed for now. Everything happened within minutes. Paramedics came to transport Francina to the hospital, and the family was left reeling from the shocking news. Even Troy was devastated that such an unfortunate thing could happen to the woman that he loved, who he was supposed to share the rest of his life with. Now it wasn't to be. Instead, she was fighting for her life, not knowing whether she would make it or not. The doctors told the family that Francina had suffered significant head injuries and broken bones, so they were going to perform emergency surgery on her to save her life. In the meantime, investigators were around to examine the fall, to determine how she could have fallen out the window. A week later, Francina was in the process of recovering from the surgery and her family became devoted to caring for her, including Troy. Although they did not get married as planned, he was still determined to take care of her, as if she was his wife. That's how much he loved her, and how much he was willing to stick by her, through the thick and thin, in sickness and in health, for better or worse. The vows he was following before he actually had a chance to say, "I do," to her. A week later, Francina was still in the process of recovery. That night, as she was about to wash her face in the bathroom before heading to bed, she couldn't help but overhear the conversation taking place downstairs in the living room. She heard Elisa sobbing uncontrollably, and the others comforting her. "Va bene, Elisa," Martina reassured her, telling her that everything was going to be okay. "No, non lo è," Elisa replied in between her sobs. "È tutta colpa mia. Ho spinto Francina apposta. Vedi, volevo ferirla, perché sono così gelosa di lei. Ottiene sempre tutto ciò che vuole. E ora sta per sposarsi con un uomo che ama. Non è giusto, perché che mi dici di me? Non posso farci niente se provo così tanto risentimento nei suoi confronti. Per l'amor del cielo, ha solo 18 anni. Elisa had just practically confessed to having pushed Francina out of the window deliberately while her cousin was alone in the room. She was supposed to help Francina put on her necklace, but instead, she ended up pushing her out the window instead. She wanted to hurt Francina, having always been jealous of her for whatever reason, believing that Francina always got everything she wanted, especially now that she was bound to marry the man that she loved, Troy Edwards. Elisa said she couldn't help the resentment that she'd apparently always felt toward Francina, and now she's trying to justify it by saying that Francina's the one getting married at only 18. Elisa was 23, the same age as Troy, and she herself was single and unattached. Men tended to gravitate more toward Francina than to her, or at least that's how she felt. That was a criminal confession in a nutshell. Francina wanted to go down and confront Elisa, but her weakened condition made her too tired to engage in any yelling. She'd yell at her tomorrow instead. She gave Troy a phone call to explain everything to him, and she asked him to report this to the authorities the next morning, which he agreed to do. This was her plan of revenge against Elisa, turning her in. When Francina woke up the next morning, Martina offered to help her downstairs to the kitchen for a nice breakfast. She asked her daughter, "Come ti senti stamattina?" wanting to know how Francina was feeling. "Sto bene, grazie, mamma," Francina replied, saying that she was feeling fine. Rosa Maria gave Francina her dish of eggs and toast, as well as a cup of orange juice, smiling adoringly at her brave granddaughter, who was handling all this with grace. Grazie mille, nonna. Di niente, amor mio. Rosa Maria gave her a kiss on the forehead to say, "You're welcome, my love." At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and the officers called out for Elisa. Elisa introduced herself to them as they informed her that she was officially charged with assault toward Francina by shoving her out the window. Elisa sobbed, apologizing profusely to Francina and the others, although there was very little her apologies could do now. With delightful smiles, the whole family watched her being escorted by law enforcement. And for the first time in her life, Francina felt victorious toward her bitter, vengeful cousin, who was now going to face the consequences of her terrible actions. A lively souvenir. A lively souvenir. We were on very good terms with our neighbors of about 4 years in our San Diego, California neighborhood. We invite each other over for barbecues, and Joe and I frequently sit in front of a TV somewhere on Sundays to watch a football game or two. Our wives, Annette and Ellie, are in a book club together, work out at LA Fitness, and enjoy poetry reading events. Last summer, we upgraded our backyard and had a pool put in. Nothing massive, just your standard 16 at 32 family pool. It was quite the hangout for both our families. Joe and Elle recently returned from visiting family in Gainesville, Florida. We all convened at their back patio for the celebratory end of their vacation to sip mimosas and Hefeweizens while they gave us all the highlights of their trip. They were excited about the resort they visited and the swampland tours they took there. They were like big kids describing how the airboat driver whipped them through the swamp, even giving them an extra thrill by Tokyo drifting on the sharp turns. "Sounds like a lot of fun," Annette replied. "Well, that's not the best part. We've found a bit of a souvenir." "Really?" "Oh yeah," Joe said proudly. I'll get it, Ellie said as she disappeared into the house. "I know initially you guys are going to think we're nuts, but I assure you, this is going to be great." "Wow, Joe," Donald said. "This is quite the build-up. The anticipation is killing us over here." Right then, Ellie emerged with a mid-sized glass tank. "Wah!" Donald exclaimed. He can't believe what he's seeing. "No way! You guys can't be serious," said Annette. "That's crazy, guys." In the glass case, there was a 2.5-foot alligator. "Isn't he beautiful?" Ellie beamed. "He's already grown a couple of inches since we've been back." "Whoa, I was actually thinking you brought back a snake or maybe an iguana. But you went all the way back to the evolutionary source. A fucking alligator," Don said. "No way this is safe." "Elle, no way," Annette cautioned. She was concerned, and her voice shook with emotion as she tried to implore her friend to abandon this idea. "This thing is gonna grow and eat you guys. No, this is a terrible idea, sweetie." No, it's okay. We thought this through, John explained, and made an informed decision. This wasn't an impulse buy. "I don't know, buddy. It looks like an impulse buy with teeth. Dawn chided them. They all laughed, except Annette. How did you even come across somebody selling an alligator, Joe? I mean, I know it's Florida, but people aren't just selling these at the 7-Eleven, she asked. Joe explained how part of the habitat tour involved observing the local wildlife, including gators. They also breed them there. This alligator was part of a litter that was to be raised within the wildlife preserve, but unfortunately, it was a runt. He was too small to compete with his siblings for food, and eventually, they would turn on him and consume him as well. The staff were going to have to put him down. This completely exacerbated Ellie, and after some conversation, a disclaimer, and cash, she somehow convinced the preserve owner to allow them to take the little guy with them. And you were okay with this, Joe? Dawn asked incredulously. Joe shrugged his shoulders. I didn't see any issues with it being so small right now. I guess I kinda kicked the can down the road as far dealing with him getting to be full-sized. As it was explained to us, they are very loyal and highly intelligent. Once domesticated, they are just like dogs or goats. Wait, Annette asked. How did you get it on the plane? Well, the preserve owner wrapped it for travel and fed it, and we just added wet towels over it and placed it in our checked bags. You ran it through baggage claim? Have you seen how they treat those suitcases? Dawn asked, almost laughing in disbelief. Oh, yes. And I was so worried about the little guy. I could hardly contain my anxiety the whole flight. I hoped he wasn't too scared. I told her, "Hey, honey, it's a reptile. They're not scared of anything." My wife and I stood there, perplexed. This has got to be the dumbest idea in the history of dumb ideas. Yet here they sat, two highly educated adults, carrying on about one of the most dangerous animals on the planet, like it's a long-haired lab puppy. I have to ask some grown-up questions. I steal a glance at my wife with a raised eyebrow, and she shrugs, effectively giving me the go-ahead. Joe? Firstly, how in the world do you domesticate an alligator? Is there like a shock collar? Here, when I zap you, it means don't bite my finger off? I mean, come on. Ha ha. I hear the sarcasm, Dawn. No. As you feed him, he gets used to your scent and your presence. He begins to associate you with food and satisfaction. It's all positive reinforcement. He bonds with you. Yeah, just like a dog, like we said. He won't bite the hand that feeds him silly. Ellie chimed in. He eats chicken, mostly. But we can throw in some fish, rodents, steak, and even pork, to give him a variety. They guy gave us a pamphlet for use as a reference, so you read Alligators for Dummies. And you think that prepared you? Annette asked. I can't believe I'm hearing this. Did you say rodents? You feed it rodents? Are you going to buy a shoebox full of mice and dump it in his glass case? Oh, don't be so crude, Dawn. Of course not, Joe said nervously. as he rubbed the back of his neck. "Well, not exactly a box full. You really are going to go through with this? How long before he grows up to be a fully carnivorous reptile? There's some exotic animal farms around. We can relocate him too, when the time comes. For a fee, they'll come and collect him, humanely, of course, and he'll live out his days at the California Preserve." Dude, is this even legal in California? Can animal control fine you or come confiscate it? Well, it's an ask for forgiveness instead of permission kind of thing. We aren't breeding it or selling it for a profit, so therefore it's characterized as an exotic pet, in my opinion. It's no more illegal that Tyson having a tiger or Michael Jackson having a chimpanzee. But this is an alligator, Joe. Annette pleaded outwardly with her friends. This is a cold-blooded beast. Every incident I have ever seen involves an alligator snapping, its jaws shut on some unsuspecting body part of the owner or trainer. We are trying to get you to see that this will end badly. You and Ellie are putting yourselves in danger. Annette's hands were on her hips, as she's clearly frustrated. We can't seem to talk any sense into our friends. Look, guys, I hear you, but we'll be fine. Come here. Joe stood and put his arms out, and he, Don, and Annette had a group hug. "Aw, there. That's so much better," Ellie said. "I know. We appreciate your concern. You're good friends, and you have raised some thoughtful questions, and I would expect no less. But friends, don't worry. This is gonna be a great experience. Alex and us will grow to be..." "Wait," Dawn interrupted. "Alex? Alex Alligator? Really, Joe?" It absolutely fit like a glove. And when I called him that, his little eyelids flipped. "I think he likes it," Ellie added. She reached in and stroked the back of its head. "You want to hold it? Here, it's okay. Let me just get him situated." She set the glass case on the table and reached in and grabbed its tail with her right hand and slid her left hand forward to grasp it under its jaw. But something must have spooked it. It let out a high-pitched snarl and spun its head, and with its tiny but razor-sharp teeth clamped down on Ellie's forefinger and thumb. Blood immediately spurted outward as Ellie screamed and knocked the glass case off the table, which exploded when it hit the patio. Alex didn't fall. However, he hung on to Ellie's flesh, dangling and thrashing with all its body weight, as if trying to rend her flesh from her. Blood started squirting out of its jaws as it whipped its body from side to side. Ellie grabbed at it and tried to pull it off, but it was dug in, and she screamed even louder. Joe grabbed its body and pulled, but it was clamped down deep, and pulling it made the flesh of Ellie's thumb started to rip from her hand, making her cry out more. Ellie collapsed onto the patio, screaming incoherently, as the gator's face was now bright red with the free-flowing blood from Ellie's mangled hand. Annette grabbed a big hunk of glass and began hitting it on its head. 1 blow, 2 blows, 3 blows. Finally, the gator released its grip, rolled over onto the patio, and scurried away. "Oh, Ellie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," Joe said as he pulled off his shirt and attempted to stem the flow of blood from Ellie's marred flesh. Her thumb was only hanging on by 2 tendons, and half the flesh from her index finger was tattered and torn. He wrapped it up with his shirt. "Dawn, put pressure here, please," Joe said, almost in tears. Annette had both hands covering her mouth and was wide-eyed with disbelief as Ellie moaned and cradled her hand. She was growing visibly pale and going into shock, no doubt. Joe called 911 while Annette comforted Ellie. Dawn quietly wondered if they'd be able to save her thumb or not. How could this thing have turned so deadly so fast? Shit, he thought. Speaking of deadly, where is that little fucker? Joe, did you see where it went? No, I didn't. The little bastard's probably terrified, hiding in some cubby hole somewhere. The dispatcher is sending animal control, but maybe we can bag it before it gets away. Damn, I fucked up, Dawn. I'm such a fuck-up, he said in a frustrated tone. What was I thinking? Hey, let's focus. No time for that now, buddy. I'll run to my house and get a spotlight real quick. So Dawn went out their back fence and crossed over onto his property. He unlatched the back fence and headed for his tool shed on the other side of the pool, when lo and behold, there was Alex. He was casually floating in their pool. There was a red stain afloat around him, apparently Ellie's blood. But Alex was totally oblivious to the carnage he caused. He's merely enjoying the cool water. Dawn doesn't know why, but he thought about the story of the scorpion and the frog. What did they expect? He's an alligator. As Dawn approached the pool, Alex seemed to sense his presence and slowly paddled towards the edge of the pool towards Dawn. Wait, what's this? What are you doing, little guy? It turned, its body exposing its tail, and made a cooing sound. Please don't let this be the second dumbest thing that happens today. Dawn squatted down and gently reached under the gator and scooped it up, holding it under its head and tail. He made sure to keep a firm grip on Alex and not expose any appendages that may trigger it. You need to be with your own kind, runt or not. He actually kinda liked the little guy. But yeah, it's time to go. You've caused enough trouble today. He heard the sirens approaching and headed back to Joe's house on loop. Maverick Kotzen, 12/27/24, on loop. It was less than an hour after my surgery that I realized I would never be able to forgive my surgeon. Merely a week prior, I had walked into my surgeon's office to go over the final details leading up to the procedure, what to eat and drink beforehand, what to not do, and a reiteration of the risks in order to confirm that I really wanted the procedure. Ever since I had fallen off a rock swing and slammed my elbow into a rock. My right arm hadn't been able to move or even bend, leading me to be effectively half as useful as I used to be. The choice to get a full reconstruction of my elbow was not an easy one. The way it had broken, there were far less invasive and safer procedures that were available to me. I was hesitant, but my surgeon took my hand, assured me that it was the best course of action, and said, "It's going to be okay." 3 days before the procedure, my anxiety had only worsened, and my partner had done the best they could to comfort me. They told me that the risks were still low, and that this procedure would return to me the full mobility I had before my life was turned upside down. Friends had reached out, comforting me and wishing me a speedy recovery, as if I had already gone through with the operation. It felt as if I had already been altered, physically and personally, by the procedure, despite not even having the surgery yet. Even my dog knew something was off, as he wagged his tail and snuggled up next to me every night in my bed, instead of sleeping in his dog bed like he always does. It felt like the natural rhythm of my life had been disrupted, and that nothing would ever feel the same way it did. I began to fantasize and romanticize my life before the accident, as if it had been the peak of existence. This, of course, glosses over the struggles I was having earlier that year to pay rent, repair my relationship with my parents, and help a friend through an accidental pregnancy. Through the storm of thoughts, I clutched desperately to the mast of the boat, repeating as the next big wave came to hit me, "It's going to be okay." 2 days before the procedure, the anxiety had not improved, and it was visible on my partner's face that they were clearly worried about me. My despondency when I was asked questions, my inattentiveness when attempting tasks with one arm, and even my lack of appetite were just a few of the worrying symptoms that were beginning to present themselves en masse. Behind my back, my partner was contacting my friends, trying to coordinate some kind of effort to boost my mood, all while I more or less lay in my bed all day, watching daytime television and periodically getting up to use the restroom. In between naps and TV fever dreams, I had flashbacks to all of the warnings from friends and family about the procedure. "Are you sure you want to do this? What if you never fully recover? I don't know about this operation. Isn't there a considerable chance they screw up and just have to amputate your arm? I fully support you and your decision, but I want to make sure you've thought it through." These criticisms, at the time, seriously made me reconsider my decision. Ultimately, I decided to stay the course, but the decision to go against the better advice of my friends felt wrong even at the time. The weird and odd feeling of regret that washed over me every time I reassured them and told them I was going through with it only amplified the more people I talked to. Whenever I talked to anyone who knew me, the surgery would sooner or later come up, and I would have to wait during conversation until that dreaded moment came. My friends were with me, surgery or no, but the storm upon which my boat had been sailing only seemed to intensify, as big wave after big wave nearly broke my ship in two. Still clutching onto that mast of hope as thoughts flowed freely in and out of my mind as I lay awake at midnight. It's going to be okay. 24 hours out from the procedure, my anxiety had completely paralyzed me. Even the most basic tasks, like brushing my teeth or going to the bathroom, felt like Herculean tasks that required tremendous effort. I turned off my phone at that point in order to calm my nerves, and had even sworn off television for the day. I just sat in my bed and read some of my favorite books, periodically taking breaks to stare out of the window. The surgery loomed like a dark cloud above my head, ready to rain over my head at any given moment and take full control of my consciousness. It dawned on me at that moment that this procedure, the one I had defended from friends and fought so hard to have, had largely come to define me as a person. At the very least, I had let it define me in many ways. Reflecting on my thoughts at the time, I am now able to see how completely enveloped I had been. Irony, though cruel. For it seemed that despite the fact that my elbow was about to be repaired, a part of me had been damaged in the process. Sure, I was to be fixed physically, but mentally, my anxiety and nervousness had never been higher. As I went to bed that night, the last thought I can remember is a gentle acceptance as the day of the surgery fast approached, and a comforting line, "It's going to be okay." On the morning of the surgery, my surgery, I was woken by my partner early in the morning. They gave me my water bottle, my clothes, and opened the door for me to get into the passenger seat of our car at a bright and sunny 4 a.m. By the time I got to the hospital, all events began to blend together. The reception, the being shown to the bed, and the surgeon's explanation of the preoperative all seemed like a free-flowing dream. The last memory I have right before going under anesthesia is of my partner holding my hand, whispering in a soft, reassuring tone, "It's going to be okay." As I would soon find out, it was not going to be okay. Based on the beginning of my story, you can guess how well my procedure went. 3 hours into the reconstruction of my elbow, a complication caused internal bleeding all throughout my arm. With no ability to stop it, they ended up having to amputate my arm from the elbow down. Upon waking, I felt phantom pain almost immediately, and would continue to feel that way for days after. My surgeon came into the room shortly after I awoke and tried consoling me. There was nothing I could have done. These things just happen sometimes. I'm sorry. Did any of his words even matter? I had held his words dear for so long, and for them to ring hollow in my moment of utmost need was one of the most depressing situations I have ever been in. My partner, in between crying sessions, attempted to reassure me. I heard him begin to say, "Don't worry, no matter what, it's going to be..." Whispers in the Snow. Title: Whispers in the Snow. Emily pressed her forehead against the cold glass of the window, her breath leaving no trace on the surface. Outside, the village lay blanketed in snow, every rooftop twinkling with warm lights. Christmas Eve had always felt quieter since Daniel's death, but this year, the silence pressed harder against her ribs. She ran her fingers along the edges of a faded photograph. Daniel's grin, all teeth and mischief, stared back at her. He was only 17, a car accident on the icy roads. At least, that's what everyone had told her. But no matter how many years passed, Emily could never quite remember the details. Or her mind was forcing her not to. "I wish you were still here," she whispered. The old box of decorations sat half empty at her feet. Relics of past holidays she'd tried to avoid. Digging through it felt more like excavation than preparation. Near the bottom, something cold brushed her fingers. A small pocket watch cracked along the face. Daniel's. It was frozen at 11:58, the time of his death. Emily traced the hands of the watch with her thumb, hesitating for only a moment before winding it. A single tick echoed in the room, her vision blurred, and the world dipped beneath her feet. She stumbled forward, clutching the mantel. When she looked at the clock on the wall, the time read midnight. 2. Emily woke to the sound of something sizzling in the kitchen. The sun cut across the wooden floor, spilling warmth she hadn't felt in years. She pushed herself up, rubbing her eyes. With surprise, she noticed she was still holding Daniel's watch in her hand tightly, as if someone else carefully passed it to her. Her attention shortly moved to her desk side. Her decorations in her room was changed. The old box of decorations on the floor was gone, replaced by a series of drawers. Her desk looked less messy. Her daily makeups and the mirror were gone. There was scent that didn't belong to her. Footsteps moved behind her. "Morning." It's a male voice. Her heart almost stopped beating. She turned slowly. Daniel stood in the kitchen, spatula in hand, flipping eggs as if this was the most natural thing in the world. The plate slipped from her fingers, shattering across the floor. Daniel glanced over his shoulder, frowning. "You all right?" he asked, stepping forward carefully. "You're acting weird." Emily couldn't breathe. Her legs shook beneath her, but she closed the distance between them, pulling him into a tight embrace. "Daniel," she choked out. You're here." Daniel stiffened for a second before hugging her back. Where else would I be? Tears streamed down Emily's face as she buried herself in the scent of him. A mixture of fresh soap and a scent just belonged to him only. No one else did. She could feel him gently tapping her back, but something was different. She pulled back to look at him. His eyes, warm but unfamiliar, lingered a little too long on her face. I thought... She shook her head, laughing through her tears. I thought I lost you. Daniel chuckled softly. You're not making any sense. Sit down. I made breakfast. She squeezed her cheek and quickly checked her phone screen. It said, Friday, 25th December, through 3. The snow outside sparkled under the afternoon sun, but Emily barely noticed it. She trailed Daniel through the village, where decorations hung on every door. She had expected people to stare, to question why he was here, but no one said a word. As they passed a bakery, the old woman squinted at them through the window. Her hand paused mid-air as she hung a wreath, but she quickly looked away. Emily squeezed Daniel's arm. Did you see that? See what? She was staring at us, like she'd seen a ghost. Daniel simply shrugged. Maybe she's not used to seeing you out and about, but Emily wasn't convinced. Was it? She was pretty sure she went there a lot. She even went there yesterday, and she said Merry Christmas to her before she left. Maybe she was just having a multi-layered dream that she could not easily wake up. If so, she hoped she would never wake up again. Later that evening, she sat on the sofa as Daniel strung lights around the tree. His humming filled the room, soft, rhythmic, but the tune was unfamiliar. What's that song? She asked, tilting her head. Daniel didn't stop. My favorite Christmas song. Emily frowned. No way. It's not. You always hated Christmas songs. You said your ear would get broken if you listened to them all the time like that. Ike. Daniel paused, blinking. Right, he said lightly. Must have slipped my mind. But the humming resumed, louder this time. By the time night fell, Emily couldn't shake the weight in her chest. Something felt wrong. She climbed the stairs quietly, pausing by Daniel's room. The door was cracked open. Inside, Daniel sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. He didn't notice her. His lips moved soundlessly, whispering something she couldn't hear. Emily leaned closer. Daniel? His head snapped toward her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. His eyes reflected the faint light from the hallway, dark and unreadable. Can't sleep, he muttered, brushing past her as he slipped out. Emily stood frozen in the doorway. She glanced back at his room, at the photo resting on his nightstand. Her breath caught. The photograph was the same one from the mantel, but her face had been scratched out. Emily's hands trembled as she flipped through the old diary she'd found in the attic. The entries were hers, but she didn't remember writing them. The final entry read, I miss him. Maybe if I wind the clock tonight, things will be different. The next page was blank. Footsteps sounded behind her. She turned sharply to see Daniel standing at the bottom of the attic stairs, the soft glow of the tree lights casting shadows across his face. Looking for something? He asked. Why is my face scratched out of the photos? Emily demanded, holding the diary close. What's happening to me? Daniel stepped forward slowly, his expression unreadable. I didn't want to tell you, he said softly. I thought it would be easier if you didn't remember. Remember what? Daniel's voice cracked as he said, You didn't come back, Emily. Not completely. The diary slipped from her hands. You died 5 years ago, Daniel whispered. The same night as me. Emily stumbled back, the room spinning. Her reflection in the window, always faint, always delayed, finally faded to nothing. In the silence, Daniel placed the pocket watch on the floor. I'm sorry, he said, but you shouldn't be here. Emily couldn't remember when he got the watch. Even this morning, the watch was with her. She tried to open the window, to wake herself up. It's been the longest dream ever in her life. Then she noticed her hand slowly passed through the window frame. The snow fell quietly as Daniel stood in the graveyard, gazing at the headstone. Emily, beloved sister, died Christmas Eve 5 years ago. A single set of footprints trailed behind him in the snow. Second fair chance. Second fair chance. Lord Farnsworth, thank you so much for inviting me to dinner. I want to apologize for anything I did to create tension between us and let you know how grateful I am to have this second chance to make a better impression. Well, Sir Fenwick, be assured if I didn't cherish my daughter, Charity, so much, you would never get another opportunity to make appeasement. She begged me to reconsider my dismissal of your attentions toward her. She is very taken with you, so you must not be all that horrible, maybe a little misguided when it comes to how you treat a lady of high standing, such as my beautiful daughter. I found you in a compromising position in the garden at that soiree. Still, she'll be joining us after our before-dinner sherry. I remember you made quite a showing at our fox hunt outing. You set a fine steed and contributed an experienced pair of foxhound to the pack. That proves you've had some culture to your upbringing. Yes, sir. I've been riding since I was a young boy. My friend and business partner, Sir Carlton Winslow, attorney at law, is the one with hound experience. His uncle used to train them. The pair were actually borrowed from a well-known sportsman, Lord Dudley Bragg. Ah, yes, Lord Bragg. The name suits him well. He was interested in courting Countess Diana, my sister-in-law, but she found him to be less than gentlemanly when he deserted her and Charity at the market fair. Matter of fact, that is how they made your acquaintance. Isn't that correct? You arranged for their escort home. Now she has been entertaining your friend, finds him quite attractive and courteous. Exactly, Lord Farnsworth. That's another reason it would be so advantageous for me to be able to court your daughter. We could assure each other to remain honorable. Wouldn't you agree? Or encourage each other's bad behavior. Hey, young man, I haven't forgotten what it was like to be your age, seeking female companionship. I must guard my daughter's reputation, you understand? Of course, your lordship. Wouldn't expect anything less. I assure you, my intentions are honorable. I am deeply in love with her already, and desire only the best for her. I would ask for her hand in marriage immediately if it found favor in your eyes. But I know our societal norms demand much more formal routines. I can only pray for your approval to make me the happiest lovesick fool in London. My joy would be eternal. I can tell how eager you are, and from her behavior, I suspect she feels the very same about you. I'll give it due consideration. So, I understand you are a solicitor, making your way up in the professional standings. Do you suppose you will be able to support my daughter in the manner to which she is accustomed? I am afraid I have spoiled her, especially since her mother passed. Well, to be forthright, it will take some time to match the heights of your accomplishments. I can only hope she is agreeable to living more meagerly until I am more established. We would be rich in love, though. Unfortunately, love does not pay the bills or trade for niceties. And, ahem, it often leads to more mouths to feed. That would only increase our happiness, sir. I am more than ready to embrace whatever our future together could hold. I would be utterly devastated to walk away from a relationship with her at this point. She is my everything. I hope you understand. I'm beginning to see things your way. If I allow this to continue, we must be proper about it. Wouldn't want you scurrying off to Gretna Green to elope over the anvil, now would we? And, Lord forbid, you sneak off to Jersey. That's about as dangerous as it gets. My daughter deserves only the best. Here she comes. Now, come, dear. Thank you for joining us. You look so lovely this evening. That sea foam coloring of your flowing gown brings out the azure of your eyes. You'll have this young man drooling all through dinner. We are ready to go into the dining hall. This way, Sir Fenwick. Yes, you look very becoming as usual, Lady Charity. May I take your arm? And please, call me Riley, sir. Of course. No need to be so formal, with only us present. I'll sit at the head of the table with each of you at my sides. Looks like the soup is already served. Let us begin with grace. Father, all this small talk has been charming, and I hope it has let you get to know Sir Riley better and understand what an upright gentleman he truly is. But could we get to the proverbial elephant in the room, since we are all alone and all adults? Sir Riley, dear? Yes, sir. I have an all-important question to ask of you concerning your vivacious daughter. I would very much like to make her my wife, if she will have me. But I need your blessing. Well, you don't beat about the bush now, do you? I was enjoying our lively discussions and imagining what kind of a son-in-law an aspiring lawyer would make. You seem knowledgeable and versed in a wide range of topics. You would never be a boring dinner guest. I can see by the way you look at and respond to my little girl, you are sincere in your feelings toward her. She mirrors those feelings back to you, sort of feeling like a third wheel between you two. Ha, ha. If I didn't give you my blessing, you two would probably defy me and find a way to be together any way you could, sneaking around behind my back or right under my nose. Am I right? So yes, let's make it official. What do you say? I say I need to get down on my knee and do this properly. My fair lady, Charity, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Yes? Oh yes. Thought you would never ask. Worse ways. Selena runs with a ferocity she didn't think she'd ever need again. Her feet thump, thump, thump on the ground, and her eyes search the dirty rooftop desperately for a familiar May. She knows she's taking too long. She can feel the time slipping through her fingers like grave dirt. She bursts out onto her fourth rooftop, a quick scan providing nothing. She turns around. Her ears catch onto the quietest sound, a scuff, a whimper. She runs over to the other corner of the building and checks behind a wall. There she is. May lays on the floor, cloudy eyes staring uselessly up at the sky, and her entire hand missing, blood leaking out of her at an alarming pace. Her gut is cut open and barely holding together, her leg bent the wrong way. Blood coats her entirely, her mouth, her neck, her chest. Selena's hand lands on his shoulder. May jumps, opening his mouth in surprise as she turns her head towards her. Selena? Her voice croaks out painfully, laced with a brittle sort of hope. Yeah, it's me, May. Hold on. Help is on the way. She'd called the ambulance as soon as she heard the news, hoping they'd be fast enough to get to her, find her, hoping she would be too. Selena carefully shifts May into her arms, getting her away from the dirty concrete, and trying desperately to stifle the blood spilling forth easily from her stomach. Selena, May says again, desperately. She says it like Selena is an angel about to bring her to salvation, as if Selena was what she needed, wanted, instead of some random punk from New York that kills people in his spare time, instead of someone who shot a bullet at her skull. I'm sorry. May grits out, blood leaking from her lips and coating his mouth. She feels useless, hopeless as blood continues to gush, and May is the one apologizing instead of her, the self-sacrificial dumbass she is. No, May, you don't get to say that. You stay with me, you hear? You stay right here with me. Her voice shakes, and she feels untethered, like everything is slipping away from her again. She runs her hands over May's unbroken arm, trying to ground the dying girl, trying to bring her back to the world of the living. Please, not again. May opens her mouth and breaks into loud, shattering coughs, blood dribbling down his chin even more. She shakes her, rougher than she probably should, trying to make her come back, make her stop drifting away, even when held beneath the calluses of her palms. May whines in pain. Come on, May. You can't go yet. You've got people to save. You've got friends who need you. Silena needs her, and yet May is leaving. She thinks of Jason and of her brother, Leo. They need her too. Need her like the air in their lungs, like the blood in their veins. Blood that May is covered in. May, please, hold on a bit longer. You can't leave me yet. Who else is going to knock the gun out of my hand? You promised. May we would live happily once this war is over. I haven't heard enough moral preaching yet. Come on. She's pleading, begging, praying to a God she no longer believes in. It's too sudden, too soon. She can't lose someone again. She can't. She'd listen to 1,000 hours of bullcrap if it meant May would just live. If it meant May would continue to lecture her and annoy her and be beside her, side breathing and smiling. May's shaking hand reaches up to his shirt and latches on, staining it with her blood. She can hear the sirens getting louder, closer. See, Silena. May's voice is scratchy, pained, weak. Shut up, May. Don't talk. Just stay awake for me. They're so close. Just a little longer. She just needs to hold on a little longer. Silena. No. May can't do this to her. She can't say goodbye. She hears the weight of her name, the finality to it. The hand on her shirt slackens. Her body starts to go limp, and she can feel it. Feel the way death grips her, like it did her brother, like it did her dad. I will miss you. Silena feels her chest shudder with a sob. The tears slip freely from her cheeks. The hand reaches up again, and it's so cold against her cheeks. So cold as it wipes away her tears. She grabs it, holds on to it, like it's the last anchor she has, pressing it to her cheek in the reminder that Silena is here, that May can't leave her here all alone. May should be yelling at her, screaming at her, like she always does. She doesn't respond, even as she shakes her, doesn't move, or breathe, or smile, or yell at her. I'm sorry, May. She whispers to the sirens and the air and the quiet body before her. I'm sorry, May. May is held in her arms, and yet she is alone. She is alone. She yells at the sky, at herself, at the world. She yells, and she yells, and then she cries. Her lips press softly to the cold fingers of the girl she was only just learning to care for. She gently sweeps her bloody hands through dark hair for the first and last time, slowly smooths her thumbs over those open, empty eyes, and closes them against the harsh wind of the city. The paramedics storm the rooftop, and she's dragged away from the body. She doesn't stay to watch them load the body into the ambulance, doesn't stay to watch the ambulance drive off slowly. In no rush to save a dead person, she walks away to a panicked shouting. She lays down in his bed, soaked in another person's blood. She stares at the ceiling with an emptiness clawing at her heart until it drags her down into darkness. She wakes up 5 minutes before her alarm. She wakes without any sleepiness. Suddenly they're thrust into a world where she remembers the feeling of bloody hands against her cheek and the weight of a dead person in her lap. It takes her a second for the feelings to rush back, for the bone-deep exhaustion to settle familiarly in her chest, and the accompanying rage to guide her sights. She stands up as the alarm rings. A standard beep, beep, beep before she shuts it off. She looks at her hands. This gives her pause. She knows she didn't wash her hands last night, remembers the feeling of blood coating each and every finger and staining every surface she touched. Selena looks at the pristine white bed, then down at her spotless white top and clean jeans. Something is wrong. Her hand reaches for her phone, and she stares down at the date with a sinking sense of insanity. That can't be right. That's impossible. The numbers don't change. November 7th, it says, clearly, as if that makes any goddamn sense. Yesterday was November 7th. Yesterday she fell asleep, covered in blood. And yet, with a sudden ferocity, she finds her hands navigating the device, pulling up her contacts, and pressing firmly on a familiar name. The phone rings, and rings, and rings. Someone picks up. "Hello?" May says over the phone, her voice scratchy from sleep with an edge of worry. Her chest rattles with her next breath. His legs wobble, and she collapses onto her bed. "Hello?" May says louder, more alert, worried at the lack of response. "Hey," Selena says quietly. It's all she can say right now. What should one say to a dead woman, not dead? How does one cope when the woman you held till her dying breath is breathing again? "Are you okay? Do you need help?" May asks. There's shuffling over the other side of the phone. a creak, more shuffling, as if May was suiting up. "I'm fine. It's nothing," she grits out. Her chest hurts, her eyes ache, her head is swimming with confusion. "It doesn't sound like nothing. Where are you?" "I'm coming over," May declares like the soldier she is, always ready to help, to fight. Misclick, she grits out before she hangs up the phone. She resists the temptation to throw it. She resists the urge to scream. She knows nightmares. She has them every night. But never has one been that real. Maybe she really is going crazy. Tremors shake her body, and she can't just forget holding someone while they die. Can't forget those sightless eyes, or those cold hands, or the putrid smell of blood so strong she was swimming in it. She can't forget the sticky warmth on her hands and her chest and her cheek, on her lips. It's like Todd all over again. Except this time, she can't trust herself, can't trust what she saw and felt and heard and smelled and tasted. She tasted death. May was dead when she fell asleep. May was alive when she woke up. May is alive. Memories of the same past experience hit her like a full-speed bullet train. She's still alive. They are stuck in a time loop, and this is going to repeat. Memory of the future. Ed is looking down the cliff, watching the waves crashing on the beach, same place he was when his baby brother went missing. His parents never spoke of it, like he never had a sibling. It is a hot summer night. Goes inside for dinner. No one says a word, same as usual. Ed does the dishes. His dad buries himself on the couch in front of the TV, and Mom goes to her room. Another boring evening at the Wallaces. Maybe all the answers to all of our questions are out there in the dark forest. Ed pushes aside a twig from a tree with his left hand to look ahead. It is so dark. He knows he is naked. Why would he? He wonders. It is freezing. Now he is elsewhere, in front of a shed. On the other side, he simply knows there are three beings, which could pass off as triplets, all looking the same, except the one in the middle seems to be a female. They are facing the wall that takes to the woods. Their oval heads are almost a triangle, with a pointy chin. The nipples of the both males have a pyramidal shape. The females are round. The three of them appear to be wearing a silvery overall, orange latex gloves up to their elbows, some work boots. Only those aren't brown or black, but in the same silvery tone. Or are they? Their actual feet. They got only 2 toes, the eyes completely white, no pupils or lids, and pointy ears, like they were elves from a fairy tale. They seem to albinos, the skin so white. They are staring at Ed like the shed was gone. He can also see them clearly. The walls appear invisible. Ed doesn't know what to do. No matter, though, because he suddenly realizes even if he wanted to move or scream or run, he couldn't. They wouldn't let him. Ed is back in bed. Was it a dream? Whatever it was, he can tell inside that shed there was a time machine. A young boy went there every night to build it, so he could get back the girl that ditched him. He was too. A lone one. Ed goes to school like it's any other day. Does not pay attention in classes. He looks out the window and sees the boy that built the time machine. He is a mysterious one, skipping stones at some lake. Back home, Ed is sitting on the grass, next to the cliff, still with those three beings on his mind. He wonders who they were and where. Where did they come from and why? What could they possibly want with him? Ed takes a shower, same as every afternoon. After he is done with his homework, and before they have dinner, he is finished cleaning up, and water is running down his body. He goes to open the curtain to get out, but he opens some kind of vortex. He can see a galaxy light years away. In the middle, a throne with a Nordic woman with her child in her arms. As soon as he looks into the woman's eyes, he's back in his bathroom, all silent at the table, barely looks at his plate during dinner, let alone touching his food. His parents eat and leave, as usual. His thoughts still on that woman, and the throne, and those three beings he saw the other night. Once on his bed, pulls the sheets up to cover his body, and something gets his attention. There is a huge man on the corner, both hands hugging his knees, showing some concern on his face. Wearing a robe and sandals, must be at least 13 feet tall. Turns around and looks into Ed's eyes. Ed wonders what troubles the giant. The boy that built the time machine pops into both their heads, or into the man's. But Ed can see it clearly, as if he himself was seeing the boy, carrying a box with tools, walking to the shed every night. He must have really loved that girl. Ed is certain he wasn't dreaming when he saw the giant, and neither is he now. The boy has been going to the cemetery in the middle of the night for several weeks, desecrating more than a few graves. Now he's put together a body from parts of some of the corpses he's dug up. And next to the body, he's put a photo of the girl who left him, in the hopes that some part of her essence will enter the empty vessel. As some modern Frankenstein, he intends to give life to the body by means of electricity. Ed sees himself pulling the lever, but before he can find out if it worked, if the body is alive, he appears to jump through time. Now Ed is in 1978, June 6th, almost the 7th. As he looks at his watch, and it's 11:50 p.m., The date he sees in a page of a journal flying by, carried out by the wind. He is in a city destroyed by a nuclear war, which never happened. Not in this reality, anyway. Ed sees the boy jumping through time and space once again. What was once a bouquet of flowers rests next to a long forgotten grave. That is all we can expect in life. When we go, our loved ones will mourn us and cry for some time, recalling memories with us, but not too long. They learn to move on and leave us behind, to forget. Ed just knows the boy was never born, not in this reality. The boy just wanted peace and kept himself from being born. There is no grave, no tomb, no resting place for the boy. He is now at peace, wherever he may be. From out of nowhere, a girl appears. As white as snow, her skin is, dark as ebony, her long hair. There is no exit for her. She's on the edge of the precipice, a man getting closer, no options left. To live or to be free, that's the end of the road for the girl. She jumps to her own demise, feeling like she cab fly for a few seconds, and then the sea. She turns into sea foam. She appears to be floating on the ocean, feeling but peace and quiet. Another man comes into the scene. He was on the beach and comes to the girl. He looks into her blue eyes. Suddenly, it is Ed looking into those eyes, and then it's the firmament and the cold space. It starts raining, and Ed can see the drops falling to floor, and the tombs, the cemetery again. The abandoned and long-forgotten grave's tombstone reads, Carola Duval. Was it all a dream? Is Ed wondering when he starts an astral travel? Feels himself leaving his body, only it's not him, but a boy he's seen before. Somewhere in dreams, perhaps. Ed sees the boy getting back in his body as three tall beings with elephant-like skin stand next to him. Those beings have rat-gray skin, huge black eyes, no iris or retina, just pupil, no nose, no mouth, oval heads. The boy covers his head with the sheets, hoping they will leave soon. Now Ed finds himself in his own room, his head covered, those beings next to him. Through the sheets, he can see blue lights and begins floating above his bed. And now he is the one hoping they leave. Ed wakes up a little dizzy and having no idea what that all was. When did they leave? Did they do something to him? He takes a shower, gets downstairs, and grabs a glass with orange juice and goes to school. Again, he pays no attention to his class or classmates. During lunch, sitting with his friends, they are all laughing and talking, and he's just gone. He remembers when the last pandemic happened. He dreamed of a guy meeting three shadowy figures. Never gave it much thought, but now he wonders if that was a dream at all. And is it somehow related to what he's been seeing in dreams? Are you here? Asks his mom, when once again he hasn't touched his food. He's playing with his fork and some peas. He found himself staring at a girl in some Greek ruins. Ed goes to bed early. He is staring at the ceiling, not thinking of anything. He doesn't even notice when he falls asleep. Or is he? Through the corner of his right eye, he sees 3 green-skinned beings, 4 feet tall, tops. They were there a second before. Now, they're gone. It is 3:15 a.m. And he falls asleep once more. He is just a child, 4, 5 years old, playing in the park, his mom holding his baby brother's hand. Now his mom goes to the ice cream truck while he watches his brother. It is now late and dark, all 3 of them walking home. His dad is there, waiting for them. And those 3 eye beings in front of them, his baby brother, they take with them. And his parents never talked about him again, like he never existed. He didn't exist, not in this reality, anyway. The female being speaks, or rather, prints it on Ed's mind. They do not move their mouths. Your brother has a bigger fate, speaks the being on the left. How can you? Asks Ed inside his head. We can see your thoughts, says the being on the right. And you can see ours, adds the one on the left. You had no sibling in this life. That's a memory of another reality, said the female. And now he's here again, looking down the cliff, watching the waves crashing on the beach. Same place he was when his baby brother went missing. Or at least, that's what Ed would remember. Mother, dearest. Annie, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot about this weekend. I'm really unwell, so I probably couldn't have made it anyway. If you can wait, I'll help you next weekend. I promise. Love you, XXX. My heart sank. Sarah was unreliable, and she does this all the time, but I really thought she'd come through this time. I suppose I thought that every time, but this time I was hoping it would be different. I knew deep down that our friendship was slipping away. We both led totally different lives, but I felt it would be quite a shame to let a near 20-year friendship fade into nothing. It was clear where she stood on it, however, as she was putting less and less effort into her lies. Next weekend would turn into next month, and next month would turn into after Christmas. By the time we got round to it, when she had a weekend where she had nothing else to do, my Gran's old house would be commandeered by rats, bugs, and all manner of weeds. It was now going to be a long, lonely 3-hour drive across the country to New Biggin, and an even lonelier weekend clearing out the house. Part of the reason I'd wanted her to come was that I didn't want to stay there overnight on my own. It was the creepiest place I'd ever been. Every summer up until I turned 14, I was forced to spend 2 weeks there while my parents flew off to some tropical destination for a break. It wasn't until I disappeared the night before I was due to be dropped off that my parents took my complaints seriously. I left them a ransom note stating that I was not in trouble and that I was safe at a friend's house. I informed them that I would return home the next morning at 11, an hour before they were due to leave for the airport. When I returned the following morning at exactly 11 a.m., my mother was already sat in the passenger seat of the car. As I walked up the drive, my father came out of the front door to meet me. He handed me the house key and an envelope and looked at me with sly grin. "Your mother is upset, as you can see. She wants to leave early." He put his hand on my shoulder. "I know you hate going to your grand's. Quite frankly, I don't blame you. But you're on your own for 2 weeks now, kid. You've got the key. There's 200 quid in there, and that has to last you until we get back. If you starve, then that's on you. And no parties, or I will personally deliver you to your grand's house and leave you there for a month." He hugged me and kissed me on the head, then got in the car. My mother didn't look at me as they backed off the drive. After a few hours of flicking between podcasts and the radio, I pulled onto the narrow country road that led to the house. It hadn't rained for a few days, but somehow the road was thick with wet mud, and the many potholes that lined it were filled with brown water. I drove carefully along for about 15 minutes until I rounded the last bend and saw the small tree that stretched over the low stone wall of the front garden. As I drove up the driveway, I had to fight every fiber of my being to not reverse out of there and leave the bloody house to rot. Why was I even here? Through some weird sense of loyalty to my mother, a woman that only saw her own mother through proxy, like some old billionaire that can't be bothered to attend board meetings. She had always refused to go to my grand's house, and also refused to explain to me why. She left as soon as she was able and moved to the nearest city. Soon after, she met my father, and the rest is history. As far as I could remember, the only time she has been back since was to see my grandfather on his deathbed. Even then, she refused to stay over. I got out of the car and tip-toed my way around more potholes to the large red front door. I pulled out the large brass key I was sent by the lawyers and opened it. It was made from a thick slab of heavy wood. I had to use my shoulder and put all of my weight into it to push it open. Once inside, I struggled to see anything. Dusk was arriving outside, and the windows were so thick with grime that the little daylight that was left was barely getting through. I pulled out my key ring and turned on my small travel torch, when something to the right of me caught the corner of my eye. Something moved. I know it did. The painting above the radiator moved its head. I swear it did. but it couldn't have. Obviously, it's a painting. My hand were tingling, and my heart felt like it was climbing a hill in a spin class. I kept the torch shining on the painting and took a few deep breaths, holding for 4 seconds and then exhaling. The painting did not move Annie. I made my way down the hallway to the main room. I retraced my childhood steps towards the large lamp in the corner of the room. I would sneak down here in the middle of the night and read all of my grandfather's old books. The only thing I actually wanted from this clear-out was his original copy of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I would read it every summer. It was the only thing I looked forward to. I found the lamp. I fumbled around with the switch, as my hands were still sweaty. When I eventually got it on, my heart sank. The bookshelf was empty. There is very little dust on the shelves, which means it was recently cleared. As far as I was told, I had the only key, so either I was being lied to or someone had broken in. My only hope was that they were in the cupboard at the bottom. I looked in with my pocket torch and was met with spider webs. I made to stand up, but something stopped me in my tracks. I froze to the spot. My eyes widened to the point where I thought they might fall out. I held my breath. Silence surrounded me until I heard it again. It pierced through my chest. I wanted to scream, to heave open the huge door and leave without looking back. But something kept me there. I slowly turned around. I tried to silently creep through the room, over to the bottom of the large wooden staircase in the middle of the grand hallway. But with every step came a creak from the ancient floorboards. Each creak of the floorboards seemed to reverberate up my spine. My head was fizzing. I reached the entrance back into the hallway, and I could still hear the laugh. It was coming from upstairs. I was drenched with sweat. I could almost feel the drops leaving my pores. My cortisol levels must have been breaking all sorts of records. This is insane. Why am I going up the stairs? At the top of the stairs, the main bedroom and the bathroom were to the right. On the left was my mother's old bedroom, the bedroom that I inherited during those dreaded summers. I waited at the top and held my breath, listening for the laughter. If this was all a game by some silly country kids, they would be lucky to leave with all of their fingers. After a few seconds, I heard it. It was coming from my mother's old room. Enough sneaking about, I leapt up the final stair and burst into the room. Empty. I listened again, but the laughter had stopped. I shone the torch around the room. I had to take a second to think back, to make sure I was remembering things right, as the room looked totally different to the last time I was here. It had been turned into a shrine for my mother. There was pictures of her everywhere, some with her parents, some with my father. There was one of her holding me as a newborn, some with her and friends. All of her old toys were dotted around the room on shelves and drawers. Old medals and school certificates were stuck to the walls. I didn't understand. Why would my grandmother do this? My mother always told me she was cold and distant, never showed any real affection. I always believed her, as that was exactly how she was with me. This made no sense, but who else would do it if it wasn't her? I picked up a photo of my mother as a baby. I looked exactly like her at that age. I almost had time to form a smile before being shocked so much. I dropped the picture and smashed the glass. Bright lights were flashing in through the window, almost as if someone was speaking Morse code. I made my way over to the window and saw that the light was coming from the headlights of my car. Shit. I must have left them on. I hope the battery isn't going flat. I rummaged around in my pockets for my keys until I realized I had them in my hand as I was using the pocket torch I made to turn around when I felt an ice-cold hand grip the back of my neck. I swung my arm around violently, elbow first, hoping to connect hard with whoever had grabbed me. I didn't connect, so I swung my arms around, hoping to land any sort of blow, just enough for me to create some space and get out. I swung and kicked, but hit nothing. There was no one there. I shook my head and repeated the same breathing exercises as I had performed in front of the painting downstairs before walking over to the door. I need to leave now. And I do mean now. Don't leave me, Annie. My fingers froze around the door handle as if it was covered in super glue. Please don't leave me, Annie. Stay here and play with me. I shone the torch up to where I heard the voice. I tried to scream. I had to scream. If I didn't scream, my head was going to explode. My mother was sat up in her bed, clutching her childhood doll. Don't go out there. If you go out there, you'll die. I don't want you to die, Annie. I want you to stay here with me forever. The scream finally left me. It left me with more force than anything I have ever felt in my life. The whole room seemed to shake. I screamed until every last breath had left my lungs. Then I threw open the door so hard it almost came off. Its hinges. I sprinted down the stairs, jumping down the last 4. I reached the front door. I hadn't locked it when I'd came in, so I twisted the large brass handle and pulled. I couldn't use my weight to push it open this time, so I opened it as far as I could, then squeezed my fingers into the opening so I could have a better grip on the door to pull. I heard the laughter again. It was getting louder, which meant it was getting closer. Annie, don't be silly. You'll die out there. Stay with me. I pulled and pulled. I eventually put my foot in the gap and pushed the door back with my heel. Once there was enough space, I squeezed through, then sprinted over to my car, swinging the door open, then diving in. I turned the key once, twice. On the third time it worked. I put it into gear, ripped the handbrake down, span around, and drove straight through the closed gate. The casualty has been identified as Annie Jones, after her car skidded off a country road and collided head-on with a tree. The incident is made even more tragic, as she had been driving back home after visiting her late grandmother's house to deal with her estate due to the tragic deaths of her mother and father the previous year. Our thoughts go out to her close friends and family at the unfortunate time